Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here's your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode in Season 3 of People in Fundraising, a professional conversation series. And today it's Friday, October 20th, 2023. I am really delighted to welcome Vanessa Boyle to our program. Hi, Vanessa.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us today.
Very excited to be here. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I do want to mention before Vanessa tells us her title and institution that Vanessa, you're about the 70th guest I've had on the program, but the very first one who has reached out to me to say, hey, Tim, I'd like to be on the program, People in Fundraising sometime. And that meant a lot to me. So thank you for reaching out.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So tell us where you're joining us today, Vanessa.
So I am joining you from sunny Southern California. It is probably 80 degrees here today in almost the end of October. But I am the Director of Prospect Management and Research at the Hoag Hospital Foundation in Newport Beach, California.
Wonderful. And how long have you been there?
I have officially been there for a year. I celebrated my year anniversary this past Tuesday, and time flies. I'm telling you, time flies.
Dynamite. So 1 year, just a few days ago. That's awesome.
Yes, yes.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
And the time has flown by. And how many people are on your team, Vanessa?
So I have 2 direct reports. For about 6 months of me starting, I had 1 direct report, an amazing, amazing person. She was kind of brand new to doing prospect management and research. And so I probably startled her a little bit when I became her boss. She had gone through actually a couple of bosses, but also just really reintroducing her to what this field does and kind of understand industry best practices. And then I hired someone who I actually used to work with at another organization about 6 months ago. So 2 direct reports right now, looking to hire a third. So we're currently, posting that job, kind of doing some recruitment, but I think everyone can agree, the job market is so unique now post-COVID in this industry, and just what candidates are looking for, what kind of flexibility that we have, what, it's remote, it's hybrid. And so I have really taken it upon myself to make sure that my direct reports are remote so that they really feel like, they can do their work sort of anywhere throughout the United States, but also making sure that we remain competitive and we retain talent. And so it's important to me to have that investment, in direct reports. But I have a great team, great energy, a lot of great ideas, and we're really making our name for ourselves at the foundation. So that's exciting.
That is so cool. And what a rich experience I imagine that is. 1 year in, you've got 2 people on the team, and as a manager, having that awareness and the motivation to make these opportunities work for your direct reports with hybrid schedules and such. So really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Vanessa, let's go back, as we often do with our guests. If you could tell us how you entered the fundraising profession, please.
A lot like what your other guests have said. I've listened to a couple of these podcasts just so I knew kind of, what I was getting myself into and why did I decide to nominate myself to do this. So completely by accident, but I will tell you, so I started in fundraising in 2008, and I was hired from at the University of Texas at Dallas, which is this now not as small, but at the time, a pretty small university that's in Richardson, Texas. And I was newly married, and my husband was working for JCPenney at the time. And so we moved out there, and we were there for a couple months, and I needed to get a full-time job. And I saw this posting on UTD, as they go, for a researcher. And simultaneously, I was getting a master's in library and information science. And I thought, okay, this could make sense, but had no idea what I was getting myself into at all.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because I remember when I applied, I want to say I applied like on a Friday, Monday, and I was, in there right away. So that was 2008. And I worked for a woman named Tony Lofton, who taught me everything around prospect research, not as much prospect management at that time.
Sure.
I really, got quite acquainted with prospect research and just what that meant. And then I worked with a colleague named Patty Carter, and I was there for about 2 years and moved back home to California. And that's when I started working at Caltech. And so that was 2010. And I was hired as a researcher. A woman named Maureen Heights hired me, and I was so grateful that she did, because that really was kind of my life for like the next 10-ish years. And so I did the role of prospect research for a few years there. And then I was really kind of getting to a place where I noticed training and education just became much more of a passion of mine. And I felt like I could not only put together training and classes and curriculum, but I really loved engaging with fundraisers. I wanted to know more about how our moves management system worked, how the database worked, and really provide just that guidance. And so I became the first advancement information trainer at Caltech.
Nice.
Again, someone who believed in me, Maureen, said this sounds like a great opportunity. So that position was created, and it still lives on there.
Awesome.
And so I did that for a little bit. And then my husband got moved to San Diego, and we moved down there. And those were 2 years that I didn't work in fundraising. So I worked for the San Diego County Office of Education. That's a mouthful. So it was just SDCOE for me. So this is like 2014. And then I was there for 2 years. Then I went back to Caltech. And it was a unique story because I felt like I didn't really understand exactly what I was doing at this SDCOE job. I'm sure I'll explain a little bit more, but it was just nothing like fundraising at all. And I reached out to someone who I worked with at Caltech, a woman named Christy Cates, who now works for University of Denver. And she hired me back. This is 2016 for a temp job for 3 months where I could work in San Diego and I could come up to Pasadena. And again, I had been there for 4.5 years before. So I worked with her. We knew each other. I knew everyone. And that temp job of 3.5 months turned into 5.5 years.
Awesome.
So it's so, like, I think back on it sometimes and I think, gosh, I was so grateful for that, like, because I didn't really expect that, to be able to go back. And it was a great place for me to work that entire time. We did so many amazing things in 5.5 years. And then admittedly, I just kind of got to a place where I was like, okay, I want to know what I'm like in a director role. So I left Caltech in September of 2021, and I started working for Loyola Marymount University. I was recruited there. And I was there for a year, and it was a really good experience to sort of step out of what I was really used to at Caltech and just how business worked and what we did. And it became, quite comfortable for me. And then I left Loyola, and now I'm at Hoag. So it's been like 14, 15 years of doing this. And it's, it's one of those things where I didn't expect it. I didn't know, okay, this is what you're going to do. But here we are.
That is awesome. And there's so many pieces I would like to pick up. And I think maybe the first one, Vanessa, would be, and similar to me, a significant career time in higher ed fundraising, and now you go to healthcare.
Yes.
So, and I know it's been a year. Could you just share some of the adaptation going from one sector to the other, what that's been like for you, please?
Yes, it's been pretty humbling in some ways, because I think you have this you get this confidence around how it works in another organization or just in another kind of field, and you understand times and sequencings, database use, all of these terms. And then all of a sudden, that completely changes and you're dealing with patients, coming into the organization daily. And really, what does that mean with the integration of other vendors, how we do ratings, how do we do profiles, how do you do your work and I do mine? And I think that was really what I wanted to do. And that was why Hoag was such an amazing place for me to find this opportunity, because it's a very well-established healthcare system here in Southern California, very well-known premium healthcare. I mean, we are talking just amazing brand and reputation and physicians. And I feel like it's been humbling because I've had to really step back and kind of not lean on maybe what I used to know, but really be open to going, I don't think it's going to work that way here. We've got to do this. But also there's so many parallels, and there's so many ways that I've been able to bring what I did before with other individuals into this space to provide consistency. Okay, this is how you use systems. This is sort of how you do this work, where you can really back off of the manual and you can really lean into this automation. Oh. And so, it's been really interesting to learn about a Grateful Patient program. I didn't know that really that existed. And what is so great about this role that I have now, and just at the foundation, just in general, amazing people are there, and people who have really left higher ed to come to healthcare, but maybe their higher ed experience had like a medical school. And so we're really able to collaborate there. So there's such a hunger for that entrepreneurialism and trying new things. But it is definitely fast paced. And I feel like I'm getting out of the exhaustion now, but it's been so rewarding. And, I have such support from leadership and from the colleagues that I work with. That said, I really feel like if I would only know one place and one kind of way of working, and this has really allowed for me to grow and to feel like I am, allowing myself to be vulnerable in situations, feel like I'm continuing to learn. I love to learn. Yeah. And so it's been interesting, but I'm really happy to get to a year mark, because I feel like, okay, that time goes by so fast. And it's interesting. I was writing, my boss had asked me like a from and a to. So what were we doing in October of 2022? And what are we doing now? And Tim, this is like a 3-page document, because there's so much that we have done. And it is really rewarding to look back on that and go, okay, we have made an impact.
Well, that is marvelous, Vanessa. And I think that dovetails nicely with a follow-up question, question 2, which was, as you look back on this year, what is most satisfying, or what stands out to you? And you have a 3-page document that says from the to. Anything you can share along those lines?
I think really probably the biggest impact is just really defining roles and responsibilities of what does the PMR team do. My very first row of my from and a to is that we were known as the research team, not a prospect management and research team. And my area of expertise and what I really feel like is a strength of mine is the prospect management, and that was never layered in. And so just that identity shift of just, we are not transactional, we're not the back office, we're not just these researchers that are able to produce these, beautiful profiles. We have levels of deliverables about where the prospect is in the life cycle of, their kind of interaction with us, from identification all the way to stewardship. So I think it has been much more of that identity shift of who are we? We need a seat at the table. We need to be partners with you. We are showcased in all staff meetings now, where it feels like we can bring forward, new ways of working. And I think more importantly, the shift has been from this administrative, okay, you put together event bios and you do this, to analytical. We think about these things. We invest the time to understand. We have processes that are not just always coming to us just because we know everything. There's a shared understanding. So from that administrative to the analytical has definitely been what I can look back and see of, this whole year's time to say, yes, we've gotten people to understand a little bit more about what we do and continue to have that identity.
That is so important. And I'm glad for you that that's worked out. And as you mentioned, the new identity. And I have to wonder, Vanessa, because you mentioned earlier that you had been doing yourself prospect research at Cal, and you thought, okay, like that was good. Now I'm ready for something else. So to get that broader skill set and to go into prospect management for yourself, I imagine is really rewarding. But then to see that translate and expand for the whole team must be icing on the cake.
I hope so. I hope they feel that way. I do think that I've had wonderful leaders and people who have really supported visions that I've had and things that I want to execute. And, we are partners in this business. We need to have as much of a voice as other people do. And we need to, continue to stay up to date with best practices and all of that. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy to kind of have all these different pieces of the pie and then all of a sudden lead a team, which the management part is a completely different layer to the doing and the task. It's that motivation, it's inspiring people, it's developing them, mentoring them. Which I feel like so many people did that for me. That's my way of being able to give back. Yeah,
beautifully put. I like that a lot. There were similarities with my own career path there as well.
Yeah.
This may be a bit of a loaded question because we have been talking about your year mark, and you mentioned exhaustion a moment ago. But as you stepped into this role and as you're onboarding new people and this 3-page from to to document, does anything stand out to you about a specific goal or a certain goal you're still aiming to achieve?
Oh, yeah, we do. I think there's still so many ways of automating processes and just automating the way that we do business. And that was a lot of what I did at Caltech in that kind of second tour, 5.5 years. I worked with, BI, analytics, all these different partners within the organization to automate so many processes that allowed for us to, this is the business process. We want this to happen and we want this type of data to be entered in. We don't want this, we want that. And it was organic, and it was not something I really kind of knew I was doing at the time, but it was a way for us to start setting in some business standards. And because of that, it allowed for us to do so much innovation. It allowed for us to really create those habits. There's a really good book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm hoping I get that right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly how I feel. And that is going to be that next step that we have at the foundation to continue to do that. And there's just so much support for that. And I feel like we just continue to get the right people at the table and the right expertise. And we recently went to Salesforce as a CRM, tier 1 system. These things are possible. So, I feel like I'm only just now at that point where I can kind of maybe get out of the weeds and no, I'm not creating new templates that we're using, and we're not launching a new project management tool and, hiring someone that now I can really lean into that strategic part of what I love so much and being able to feel like this is a decision we should make because this is how the organization will be impacted. And I feel like now that I had that year to continue to build the foundation of what we're doing and create that identity and get clarity on roles and responsibilities, I feel like that's that next step, and I think you spend so much time at a new job, or at least what I would recommend, building relationships and building trust with not only leadership, but colleagues, because at some point you're going to need to really lean into that, whether it's, okay, we're going to do things a little bit of a different way, but you have to build trust with individuals, and you have to be able to feel like there's a commonality of a goal that we're all trying to achieve. And I've really found that in this year, I've been able to do that. And I work with incredible people.
Awesome.
I love all of them.
Yeah. Oh, that's so rewarding.
Yes, it is.
Well, Vanessa, you just mentioned some really key components of soft skills with trust and communication and mentoring. My next question is a pivot from those soft skills and communication styles. And I wanted to dive into this more of a hard skill from your LinkedIn bio, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I'm going to quote what you wrote on your About section. Quote, Vanessa, a big believer in automating and customizing data visualization in tandem with data analytics to create efficiencies and precise reporting. So that is at the meat of prospect management. And I imagine something with Grateful Patient program overlapped with that. So could you please elaborate, maybe, talking high level about a specific project that was the key of automating and customizing?
Yes. I had really wonderful people that I worked with at Caltech, especially on like the BI and the analytics side. Juan, Torres, Kelly Douglas. I feel like I need to drop these names because you never do any of these things on your own. Never. And pretty much over time, we had built in all of these processes that were encompassed in QAs. They were daily emails that would come to me that would say, this occurred in the system. Okay, we do this. So someone moved a proposal into solicitation. Let's move the stage. And that became 100 of these QAs. It wouldn't run every day, but they were identified as errors or just, things that were outside of the business process that would come to us on a daily basis. And it was because of that we had such precise reporting. We could do forecasting because we weren't reaching back and going, oh, yep, see, we did it that way, and now we're going to do something a little bit different. And again, it was a way for us to really showcase how we could systematize this process that covered portfolio assignments, stage management, daily gifts, contact reports, wealthy zip codes. It didn't just involve prospect management. It was also around prospect research that, again, the data would feed to us. And we were able to move out of that proactive to, out of a reactive office to a proactive office. We didn't, we weren't like going through these sea of emails of people wanting things. We were telling them, okay, this is updated.
Yeah.
And it really, it stopped such a big learning curve with people understanding the data because it had all been consistent. And so Caltech actually just won a Grand Gold Case Award. That it was, a lot of people involved, but I was highly involved in what that award was around, which was how we're offering prospects to fundraisers using a task feature within the system, all created within the system that someone wasn't reading, again, their email. And it was because we had these ideas so long ago to build in these standardizations of business process and the way that we do things, that using the system only felt automatic. We wanted everyone to be in the system, to feel like they had clarity around what was, on their homepage and what was required of them. And they've since automated a lot of those things. So I know that was a lot of why they won that award. But as a result of winning that award, I got a lot of emails from colleagues that,
awesome.
Oh my gosh, Vanessa, this was part of, what we did. And it was really rewarding because I think that when you start talking about AI and analytics and reporting and all these different components that, as someone who works in a PMR role, you start thinking like, okay, is that going to overshadow what I do? Like, how do we do that? And I think really the key for me has always been workflows, You can have all this data come to you and it could be really great, but unless you have a workflow of how do you then offer that prospect, how do you make sure that that information goes back into the system? How does everybody read that? What is distributed in terms of KPIs? Then it's just data that,
Sure.
So I have really felt like this way of having this integration builds the efficiencies because you can rely on a workflow and a process that the data help inform to have and get results.
Yes.
We already work hard enough, and that's again, the way I feel like we keep our identity as people who do this work and we don't somehow get, lost in the shuffle. And it feels like there's validation in us being able to continue on in this industry.
That's a great answer. It's so important to have that sense of these are the tools that we need to implement in order to make this more efficient. And then certainly there is, resource allocation and mental energy that goes into charting those out. And it's so beneficial once those are established.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I have to think, Vanessa, that perhaps you mentioned information science and library degree. I just have to, and this is the next question, like this, do any of those skills that you were developing and refining in at that degree, how does it translate to what you now do in your career with prospect management?
It's funny because it feels like a long time ago that I got that degree, but it was so progressive the way that San Jose State did it because it was an online program. So I wasn't physically in a seat. And the big reason why I wanted to do that, I was a history major at Long Beach State. And I remember talking to my boyfriend, my husband at the time, going, I don't know. I was art history major at that point. I thought, I probably need to be a history major. I need to write. I need to do these things. But later on, I realized I don't really know that I want to be a teacher. I just, I love the training and the education, but I don't know that that's what I want to do. And I went into library science because the world was changing. This is 2008, 2009 into all of this digital space. And I feel like because San Jose's program was all online, I had to really time manage. I was working full time. I was living, somewhere brand new. I was, working in a new industry and I was just really establishing myself as a professional. And it was because of the way that they structured that program with having to present, to people who you're not physically with. I had to really lean on presentation skills, being concise, building relationships, doing, again, the time management component. And I think what they did such a nice job of that I feel like I think about, often is just being that one step ahead and realizing that, especially in prospect research, and very true in the library space, how often do we get asked a request that we have to go, is that really what you need? I don't know that that's what you might need this. So that reference interview of what you're taught in that, program and insightful questions and really, leading into that, it was because of that I feel like, okay, this translates because again, how often are we asking people, is that really what you want? And maybe it is, it's, that's not a negative. It's just, how do you ask people those right questions to get to exactly what they're looking for, which I think we in this industry, we can struggle with sometimes because someone asks, we give. And we have to ask those questions. How can I help you the best? Is that exactly what you need to know? Are you really looking for this? Because I could spend 8 hours, give you something, and then you go, that's not really what I want. I just need this. So it's those kinds of skills, along with kind of all just, you're in a master's program and you want to get done, in 2 years. It's that reference interview that I think about is really helpful to know.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I was also a history major in college and master's.
It is interesting. There was someone else who was on your podcast too, was saying she was a history major, and I went, we should have we should all have a time to get together and talk about, what happened.
Yes, absolutely. And what does it say about that field that drives people into prospect development?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh man. Well, thank you for that response, Vanessa. My next question I'm going to try and truncate it. It's a long quote.
Oh, sure.
I haven't asked anyone this question yet in the program, so I have a sheet. This is the sheet that you guests get, and I've got a mask. There you go. I have a master file with like 200 questions or quotes from people. And I think I in addition to getting the professional side of people, I want to get some of the personal side of the guests on the program. So I sent you this quote ahead of time, and I would love to hear any reflections you had on this. It's a quote by Charlie Wartzel and Anne Helen Peterson from their book, How to Care Less About Work, which, that in itself is is quite a title.
Right. True.
But their quote is, "We love to talk about kids' personalities, how unique and joyful they are. We don't grow out of those characteristics so much as we subsume them with duties. But those joyful, unique, weird characteristics are building blocks of our humanness. We must preserve those inclinations towards delight and curiosity, feelings that you can't recreate with a machine or optimize for peak productivity. They are worth rediscovering, not because they allow us to rest and as such make us better workers, but we must rediscover those personalities because they anchor us to who at heart we've always been." So any thoughts come to mind as you talked about your career, talked about BI and artificial intelligence as well? There may be some synergies there.
Yeah, and I really loved reading this and having some time to think about it, because I think there's so many ways you can answer this, and just, what speaks to you in terms of thinking about this, because of course that's what we love about kids. I don't have kids of my own. My twin brother has 2 children. Today's actually my nephew's birthday. He's turning 11.
Awesome.
So happy birthday, Noah. And I think about how they have continued to, become people and humans, and they in their younger years would just say what they think. And, you're just like, in some ways you're kind of startled, like, oh, okay. Because you don't have a filter, because you're a young kid and you haven't learned those, the manners and the traditions and things that you haven't really, you just haven't learned that yet. You're just not old enough. And I think as you continue to get older and then you start working and you have more responsibility and you become much more of a professional, you suppress that and you don't say those things, maybe in meetings, and you don't have that, which I think that what I can say now, for me, is that I definitely went through that time, where I felt like I couldn't really speak up in meetings. And, that had a lot to do with just how I was evolving as a person and just the confidence that I was having in myself. Education helped, having, working somewhere that you're really around a lot of innovation. Caltech was such an amazing and inspiring place to work at for so long.
Yeah.
But you also, maybe you have a spouse who's continuing to grow in their career, so you see things. But then I think what kind of stuck out to me in this is you kind of get in that place where you don't care less about what people think. You still care about what people think, but you are okay with having a difference of opinion and saying something in a meeting and feeling like you can have a very healthy dialogue with someone else about maybe a business process or a plan. And you just become a little bit more confident to be challenged and to not go, oh no, I can't say that. Like, we have to have diversity of thought. We can't have this group think where everyone just walks out of a meeting like, that was great, we're going to do this. That's why right now, I think in this industry, because of all these ways, philanthropy is changing. We have these huge transformational gifts that individuals are giving to these very worthy causes. How do we look at engagement versus ratings versus, frequency of like visiting a hospital or, you know, years, like I'm a parent and I also went to school here, whatever that characteristic is. But I think that you do feel like as you get older, you can speak up, and it's actually really freeing. And you don't know that as a kid because you don't know the difference. But when you become a little bit older and you are more professionally established, you're okay with walking out of a meeting or having a disagreement. And that's what's so great. We should feel that way. That is how we progress in the world, and how I think we continue to strive to do the excellence in our work, because we're okay to say that's how we feel.
Right. Yes. It's so important. And I have to imagine, Vanessa, that your experience will resonate with a lot of other people in our particular sector of fundraising, where either it's the company culture or it's the personalities in the room. And you mentioned this earlier about the back office, and the work you have done to change that mindset, how others view you and your team. But yeah, I remember that too, of like, I have an opinion. I don't think I can speak up though, because this person's been here for 14 years and they have a different title and they're bringing in money.
Yeah, it is. You're totally right. And that's where I think we can have this exchange of just feelings and emotions. And then how do we transition again from just being someone who just, you know, I'm giving you this, maybe we don't even hear back, you know, this is a profile in, you know, intelligence. I'm never understanding what's going on. We are as much, especially in the research, I really try to tell people the investment of being accurate, correct, strategic, you know, making sure we're getting all the giving for this person. Because gosh, if I forget that one gift, like, you know, the world is over. How do we not feel like you might learn something in that meeting and share back with me what you learn? I want to know what happens. And so I do think that I've just, again, I think I've had a wonderful, you know, support and mentorship of individuals throughout my career that I hope I'm giving to people who want to listen, or, you know, who are hoping I will help them in some way, that we have just as much of a voice and just as much of that space to be able to share what we think is right and continue to, you know, invest in the good work that an organization is doing through the work that we do. That is really, we often feel like we're writing bios on people's lives that we've never met, you know, or like expecting that we know someone's going to act some way based on what they have before, you know, we know so much, and we need to make sure that we have, that we are heard. And I don't think that's so much of an issue as it used to be before. I think there's definitely that evolution, but it is always really nice to hear that.
Absolutely. Yes. So true. Well, thank you for that. In addition to you being the first guest to proactively raise your hand, I also really appreciated Vanessa's review of my questions. And the next one, our last one for the day, Vanessa, is one that you suggested to me. And I think it's so important. I would love to give you time to talk about it. To tee it off, Vanessa said, hey, how about we talk about this? To have Vanessa describe the experience of being a prospect management and research role, how we, one, build partnerships with fundraisers and leaders, having a seat at the table, and two, discussing experiences you have had being mentored and the importance of being a mentor when you are a leader and helping your direct reports feel heard and empowered. There's a lot of substance to that. I'd love to, here you go.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I feel like answering kind of the latter part of that helps to like inform how you know, get to this place, because we can never do things on our own. You know, we never work in a vacuum. We always have someone who is a partner, who's a champion. And I really feel like in my experience, you know, first is just being open to, being mentored and to feel like there's someone who can take you under their wing and give you, feedback and tools and guidance on how to show up in a meeting, how to write a really good communication, how to maybe ask some intentional questions to get to, a better answer, but also someone who you feel like you can just be vulnerable with. And I think that has been probably the key for me. I already mentioned her, but Christy Cates, who I worked with at Caltech for a long time, I would definitely define as someone who's been a pillar mentor for me. And, she's become a friend, which has been really, hey, that's just been a, kind of a nice outcome of just us being able to work together. But what she did that I really continue to try to model is giving feedback, and really feeling like giving feedback in a way that isn't threatening it's a skill. It's not easy to do that because, when you get feedback, you internalize it and you think, oh no, I've done something wrong. But really that feedback and the investment of that is so that the individual gets better and we think differently. And we don't just, we open ourselves up to maybe how we're perceived versus how we think we are perceived, or how we think, we show ourselves. And so I feel like I had, and Christy is one of them. I also had a woman that I worked with during that time when I was at SDCOE that was, so incredibly intelligent. And Tim, she was so detail oriented. I have never met someone who was so detail oriented in my life. And she would find things and call them out to me. And I would feel deflated. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm horrible. Why am I even working this? But what she taught me, and what I think is so important that we as leaders continue to remember, is all that feedback that she gave me, all the call outs, helped me to get to where I am now. And it was not easy. There were,
I'm sure,
sometimes it was really hard. But I think that because we are managers, we're often really good at the job that we've done. And so someone's tapped us on the shoulder and said, you know what, I'm going to make you a manager. But really, to be a manager is, in my opinion, of course, it's about the work. Yes, we're here to do a job. This is what is expected of you.
Yeah.
We are also humans first. We have lives. We have families. We have, hobbies, things that we like to do. And work is a part of us and who, it defines us and what we do. Yeah. But I do feel like that piece has to always be embedded in accepting a leadership job. Because also as a leader, you have to realize you're not going to be the expert anymore. You might have someone who is very, very, skilled in a particular area. And so I think that I have learned that that's okay. I haven't really done prospect research, in a while. I've done a lot of prospect management. So that's what I know I can lean on, and I can really teach someone to do it in the way that was taught to me. And so I continue, to make sure that I provide that for direct reports, but also, someone's going to know a lot more about research, vendors, way to do business that I don't, and I'm okay with that. And I think you have to realize that there's no, it's okay to admit that. And also to tell your team, listen, we're a team. If you have a good idea that I have never thought of in my entire life, that is okay. Like, you develop people to feel like they have a voice, they are empowered, they can say things, you can disagree. And when you win as a team, there's so much benefit to that. Yeah. And I think that because of that, I think because I was always given that confidence and that really good feedback that sometimes, maybe felt a little harsher, it made me want to stick up for myself and feel like I can ask to be in a meeting. Oh, you're talking about a debrief from an event. I need to be there because I can provide that extra level of intelligence that can help you to close the loop here. So I encourage everyone to really think about how you're not inappropriately inserting yourself into some kind of conversation at work that you weren't invited to. It's okay. You can ask. And I do think that we also have to realize on the work that we do that, people are not going to be as, how do I say this? It's like, we have to realize that the work that we do is kind of a niche little world, right? And when you work with fundraisers or when you work with leadership, they're maybe not as data oriented as you are, and they don't really need to know all the detail. So I think you have to learn. And again, through that mentorship, and again, having a seat at the table, is to feel like you can represent the data, you can represent the ideas in common language that everyone will understand, because what's going to help is you build that trust, and then they can't see you not as that meeting. So there is a little bit of us having to maybe release from the detail and release from feeling like we need to showcase everything, really focus on, what that high level is. And again, I think you get that from feedback. That could be someone who is a direct report, but also, and I mean, we could talk about this forever. So, but I do think it is very important that when you're looking for a seat at the table, you go to your vice president of development, you talk to people who are at a leadership role, and you really get to know your fundraisers, because they are moving so fast. They've got metrics, goals, dollars they've got to raise. They need something quick. But if you can really capture and build that trust and relationship with those individuals, I think that's only going to lead to you being more involved, and then you have more satisfaction in the work that you do, and then you continue to grow. So I do think mentorship and developing individuals it is really rewarding, number one, because that woman, Tony Lofton, who I mentioned before that I learned from, I'm the same age as she was when I started in this business. And one of my direct reports is about the same age as I was when I started in this business. And I went,
interesting.
Well, I'm old. Like that's what I think. But but it's also just one of those things that's that full circle that I didn't expect.
Yeah, sure.
So
as I was listening to you, Vanessa, you touched on so many essential pieces of the mentorship, as well as the collaborativeness with your colleagues, learning communication styles. As you mentioned, like, you don't want to give them, as a researcher or data person, you don't come to the table with everything all laid out, which is a mind shift. But also, I think, and you touched on this as well, just that, we're people first. And I think, getting, as you mentioned, like getting some pretty detailed feedback from someone earlier in your career was harsh, but it also shows you that they were trying to build you up. They had an investment in not just your professional development, but also who you are as a person. I know for me, I would get kind of personally defensive when I kept hearing, oh, well, they're back office and they're back. And my wife I told her one day, like, this term keeps coming up. And she's like, there has to be a separation, Tim, between something happening at work and something happening, in your home life. Like, you're not back office at home with our family. So like, don't bleed it over. No. But just, I think, being vulnerable, you mentioned that term, to how can I improve? How can I improve as a person, as a leader, as a mentor? How can I improve as a person too is important.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think we've all had those exchanges with our spouse on a bad day, or, a partner, a family member, or whatever. And I think it is true. Those, again, you hopefully evolve to realizing that the higher you go up, the less buffering there is. So you're going to get a little bit more of that direct feedback. And I have a lot of, I can sit here and say, give feedback, it's just words. But sometimes, yes, of course it hurts. Like, I have a certain level of just expectation of myself, but also in those moments of when you are, feeling a little down, you just, okay, I'm going to lean on all the things that I have done, and I'm going to use that support system of what I have outside of the work or the people who you work with, to keep going. Because there's obviously that deep passion with what we do that we want to keep going.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get a little knocked down, and that is okay. And I do think that, again, it's one of those times in life where I can look back and I can think, because I got that piece of feedback, I really now know how to put presentations together. I know how to train people because the feedback I got was this. And in the moment, it really burned, but they were right.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Yeah. Oh, such a great answer. You covered numerous pieces of that working environment. So thank you. Thank you for suggesting we cover that, and B, the preparation you put into that answer. That was really insightful. And I think it applies to everyone because we are human first and foremost. So before I let you go, Vanessa, I imagine that people watching your conversation today will want to know, what is that building behind you? Where is it?
I know. This is my backyard. No, this is wouldn't that be great? This is a backdrop of the Starbucks Milan Roastery. My husband works for Starbucks, and so it's just a beautiful photo that I think is just really showcasing a very, kind of calm vibe. But you can see that little star R that's right there.
Oh.
So it's those roasteries.
Yes.
And this is, something that I don't often do Zooms anymore because I'm in the office, and so when I have to do Zoom, I'm like, oh, this kind of reminds me of the old days when I had to be on Zoom a lot. But yes, it's, I try to coordinate it, with the outfit a little bit.
I was going to mention that, yes.
So it works. But, that was the fun part, right? Like during COVID, your Zoom background and getting all those new ones, it's like a part-time hobby.
Yes. I made it a part-time hobby. Like you, I was working at a healthcare foundation during COVID, and every week I would change my name. And we didn't use Zoom. We used Teams and Skype earlier. And so I was able to change my name. And so I'd be athletes. I'd be Michael Jordan one week, or I'd be Slash from Guns N' Roses.
Oh my gosh.
And it quickly got to the point where, like, I had people kind of guessing, like they'd send me a Slack, who are you going to be this week? And it's almost Halloween. Are you going to be Michael Myers or whatever it is? And
yes. Oh my gosh. That's so funny.
So that helped us get through all of the meetings to a degree.
I know. It's true. Little coping mechanisms.
Yes. Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for your time today. I think you've just done a really great job talking about going from higher ed to healthcare, going from research to prospect management, being mentored to being a mentor, aspiring to be a leader, now being a leader. I'm just delighted to give you this platform to talk about those career accomplishments. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yes, thank you, Tim.
Yeah, my pleasure. And for our audience, thank you for supporting the People in Fundraising series. Vanessa's conversation will be part of the early round of season 3. And you can find it on LinkedIn and YouTube in late January of 2024. So we will see you at that point. And Vanessa, I hope our paths cross in person someday.
Thank you.
Thank you.